Shunsui Kyoraku is one of the most iconic characters in Bleach, and for a long time after Kubo introduced him during the beginning stages of the Soul Society arc, he has been built up to be an incredible fighter, and his lack of willingness to do battle just served to make us more excited to see him inevitably fight. We were teased here and there with his battle against Yamamoto alongside Ukitake. We were teased even more in his battle against Coyote Stark, where he wanted to use his Bankai but chose not to because of how dangerous it would be to everyone else. All these different things added to the legend of Shunsui Kyoraku and begged the question, what is it going to take for Shunsui Kyoraku to use his Bankai, and what is his Bankai going to be? Well, Kubo came through for us during the 1000-Year Blood War arc, and I have to say, the person Kubo chose to be the opponent for Shunsui Kyoraku in Lilibaro, leader of Yuha Schutzstaffel, was very fitting. You have the captain commander of the Gotei 13 on one side, and you have the leader of the Schutzstaffel, the one given the first shrift in Lilibaro. I think that was fitting in so many ways, and today I'm going to give you my Bankai breakdown for Katen Kyokatsu Karamatsu Shinju. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Before we dive into the specific details relating to Shunsui's Bankai, there's two things I want to hit on. Number one is to give you information on the two sides that are at war here. On one side, we have Lilibaro, the X-axis. By this time, in his Volstandish form, Lilibaro is currently intangible. He's made of light, he's wielding light attacks, and he is intangible to physical attacks. And on the other side, you have Shunsui Kyoraku, who ends up wielding quite conceptual abilities, which made for a very thrilling contest between the two. You have intangibility and invulnerability to physical attacks on one end, and then on the other end you have this conceptual hacks broken abilities. Who's going to come out on top? I'm sure you guys know. The second thing I want to hit on is that Shunsui Kyoraku falls into a category of Bleach characters that I like to call the mastered Bankai users. I am a firm believer that in the world of Bleach you have two types of characters. You have characters who have simply attained a Bankai, and you have characters who have mastered a Bankai. And the difference in power between one who has simply attained versus mastered is quite significant. And so as I'm going through all these different characters in the coming days and the coming weeks and breaking down their Bankais, I will be specifying whether they are a person who has mastered their Bankai or simply attained it, because you will see that there is a very important difference. There's a difference in how many stages there are to the Bankai. There's a difference in understanding the limitations of the Bankai, which then bleeds into an understanding of how to minimize damage of your Bankai to yourself, and so on and so forth. I'll be sure to educate you guys as we go along. So with that, I think I've taken care of the groundwork. I've taken care of the foundation. Let's begin. To activate his Bankai, Shunsui sticks his swords into the ground, and dark, creeping shadows that look like root extend from him. A dark shadow of a woman caresses him, and aura extends from his body outward. Kubo makes that incredibly clear. The area of effect that Shunsui's Bankai possesses is quite large, reaching Ichigo and the others in their encounter with Askin. The sky appears to have been darkened, and the temperature feels like it's dropped, but neither of these things are quite true. Allow me to explain. You do feel cold, and it does feel dark, but it's due to their body's reaction to the level of power and Ryotsu that has enveloped the space. The bystanders caught in Shinsui's Bankai develop chills over their bodies, and it physically manifests in a change in perception of both sight and temperature. Even Lilibaro is affected by this, although his prideful demeanor prevents him from outrightly admitting it. And so to recap here, it's not actually dark and it's not actually cold. It just feels like it's dark, and it feels like it's cold. Why? Because of his Bankai's area of effect. Shinsui's Bankai is divided into multiple stages characterized by what he calls dons or acts. If a Shikai makes children's plays come true and binds him and his opponents by the rules of the game, his Bankai enacts tragic plays, and the affected are bound by the contents of that story. There's a beautiful sadness to the story of the play itself that revolves around betrayal and, to be quite honest, suicide. Double suicide. Act 1 is the sharing of hesitation wounds. The wounds inflicted on your partner's body appear on your own as though they are being shared, but you cannot die from them. On the battle level, this means all of Shunsui's damage is reflected onto Lilibaro, and this bypasses his physical intangibility, the same that gave Shunsui so many fits moments before. On a conceptual level, to track the story of this tragic tale, in Act 1, there's a couple and the man physically abused his partner. He beat her down, but the wounds he inflicted on her were inflicted back on him as well. But the kicker is that neither of them could die from this affliction. Next, in Act 2, called the Pillow of Shame or Cushion of Deep Remorse, the man, now regretting the wounds he himself inflicted on his partner, lies face down in bed with a deep sense of shame and is stricken with an incurable disease. This is yet another example of damage that is inflicted onto a physically invulnerable Lilibaro. Shunsui's Bankai bypasses physical abilities. Whatever physical strengths you have, whatever physical endurance you have, his Bankai bypasses that and just attaches these fates directly to you. It's incredibly broken. In keeping with the narrative here, the man beat his wife, was struck with the same wound he gave her, became remorseful and took to bed, but in his shame, he became incredibly sick. Now, note, Shunsui himself does not catch this disease. The wife in the story doesn't get sick, only the husband does. But this does lead directly into Act 3, the Abyss. Accepting their fate, they throw themselves into the rising water until each other's spiritual pressures are exhausted. This is the suicidal aspect of the story. The wife seemingly chooses to die with her husband even though he physically abused her, or so you think. Because even though story-wise, and this is my interpretation of course, her husband doesn't die from jumping into the waters, no. She ties a string around his neck and beheads him. That is what kills him, before she herself dies later from drowning. We'll get to that point, but to go back to Act 3, just like the sky didn't actually get dark, and just like the temperature didn't actually drop, I don't believe Shunsui summoned actual water into the vicinity. This is just the effects of being caught within the domain of his Bankai ability. The things he's doing to you within the Bankai are actually real, so to say. You know, like the sharing of wounds is actually sharing wounds. The disease infliction is actually being inflicted. And he explains, while watching Lilibaro try to fly to the surface with no avail, that we've cast ourselves into the water. Throwing your body into frigid waters can cause your resolve to freeze up. In other words, the actual thing that's preventing Lilibaro from escaping is that Act 3's Abyss uses the reference of dying by drowning as a conduit to infer the loss of resolve and the embracing of despair. And so, Lilibaro is trying to physically leave the water by going to the surface, but it's not actually a water problem. The Bankai's effect robs you of your resolve and throws you into a state of despair, and that then manifests itself as an inability to get to the surface. Like, this is some heavy stuff and it's absolutely crazy. And just to hammer down the blurring of reality even more, Shunsui talks to his Bankai form called Sakura Nosuke, but Lila cannot see her and he cannot hear her. This is a deeply complicated Bankai. And so, the story goes into its final act. The woman takes pity on the man who seeks death, and in her pity, wraps a white thread of regret around his throat. Shunsui then snaps the thread and beheads Lilibaro. Now, this is no small feat. Lilibaro by this time cannot be affected by physical attacks, he just can't. Shunsui in this instance actually cut his head off, using this thread-like ability that's not actually real. It's a white thread of an abused wife's regret that wraps around your neck and cleaves it right off. But it's not a real thread. His Bankai's conceptual thread that cuts off a man's head in his tragic story is actually able to cut off the head of his opponent in real life. That is insane. That is actually insane. Shunsui Kyoraku's Bankai and its ability to enact the contents of the play he's choosing it's quite amazing. If it happened in the play, it will happen to you. It doesn't matter how strong you are physically. If it happened in the play, it will happen to you, period. Even an intangible opponent who is made up of light and cannot be physically struck was unable to overcome it. The only way he actually did is that Lilibaro has an even greater ability. Shunsui actually cut his head off, but he doesn't die when you cut his head off. Weapons cannot kill him, neither can any form of Ryotsu. He says he's immortal, and the only thing that can really affect him is his own powers. The only way you're going to beat Lilibaro, unless you're Yuha with Osh Valen, is to find a way to reflect his own abilities back at him. That's literally all you can do. But, enough about that. Shunsui Kyoraku's Bankai, Katen Kyokotsu Karamatsu Shinju. It needed to be great. It needed to be thematically sound, and it needed to be realistically powerful. Kubo succeeded in doing all three. His is one of the most broken abilities in Bleach. Just humor me. Think about this. Compare Shunsui's Bankai with that of Zanka no Itachi. Think about it. Shunsui's Bankai abilities bypass Yamamoto's Armor of the Sun. It doesn't matter how great Yamamoto's defenses are. Shunsui's plays, they skip over your defenses. They skip over your physical abilities. It also wouldn't matter how many people would be summoned by Zanka no Itachi. If you're caught at his Bankai's range, you will be affected by him. This guy is so incredibly broken, it's insane. And so to close, I officially give Katen Kyokotsu Kadomatsu Shinju a Bankai rating of 95. It's one of the best created Bankai in Bleach. Astoundingly stupendous. Like, comment, and subscribe. Next time, we analyze the Bankai of Toshiro Hitsugaya. Look forward to that. Take care, guys. This is your boy, signing out. Peace.